Okay, let's get into this straight away so that you can get first-hand experience of just how quickly and easily you can learn Spanish, even if you're starting from zero today. And I know that not all of you are complete beginners, so there's a section for non-beginners. And if this applies to you, you can skip forward to the time code that's coming up on the screen now, or better still, stick with us for some extra practice. Welcome to ProSpanish. Okay, we're going to start with the Spanish we've got here. Now, don't worry, this isn't about memorizing. You will end up knowing it all, but you won't have to memorize it. Okay, we're going to start just by looking at the first three. So we've got aparcar, to park. Dejar las maletas, to leave the suitcases. We might say to leave the bags, that's fine. To leave the suitcases, to leave the bags. And to help you remember that las maletas are suitcases or bags, maybe you could imagine some huge mallets hammering away on a suitcase. And that visual image can help you remember that maletas are suitcases. And probarlo. Probarlo is to try it. Probar, to try, and then lo is it. And you can see how the it just sticks on to the end of the verb. Probarlo, to try it. See if you can find, just in those three things we've looked at, can you find the word that just means to leave? Yeah, to leave is dejar. So dejar las maletas, to leave the suitcases. So to leave is dejar. Can you work out how we would say to leave it? So we've seen to try it. By the way, to try it, you can think of to probe it, to kind of see what it's like, probing it. And that's going to help you remember that probar is to try. Anyway, we were saying to leave it. How would you say to leave it? Dejarlo. Dejarlo. So the lo just sticks on the end of dejar. Dejarlo, to leave it. We could say to park it. So I don't know where to park it. How would you say to park it? Aparcarlo. Aparcarlo. Just adding the lo on the end there. And just looking at the third column, we'll just add two things in there. So here is aquí. Nice and easy. Aquí. And first is primero. Primero. First. So aquí is here and primero is first. So looking at what we've got so far, how would you say to park here? What would that be? To park here. Aparcar aquí. Aparcar aquí. And just to mention that while many of the approaches used in this video are embedded throughout my ProSpanish Levels 1 to 6 course, the pace of that course is much more relaxed so that there's plenty of time to learn everything as you go. Whereas now I'm trying to squeeze in as much as I can just so that you can get motivated by experiencing how quickly it's possible to learn Spanish. Have a guess what this means. You don't have to understand everything, but guess the gist. Es imposible aparcar aquí. Es imposible aparcar aquí. Yeah, you probably heard imposible, impossible. It's impossible to park here. How about to try it first? How would you say that? To try it first. Probarlo primero. Probarlo primero. And have a look at the first two in the first column. First of all, we have puedo, I can, but it's also can I. So the question is the same in Spanish, just a change of tone. Puedo, can I? and then whatever it might be. So puedo, I can, or can I? And then where can I? So you can just see that we've just added donde. Donde is where. So puedo is can I. Donde puedo is where can I. Donde puedo. How would you say, so just looking at column 1 and column 2, how would you say, where can I park? What would that be? Where can I park? ¿Dónde puedo aparcar? ¿Dónde puedo aparcar? Where can I park? How about can I? So using just puedo, so we don't need the donde now. Can I try it? What would that be? ¿Puedo probarlo? ¿Puedo probarlo? So can I try it? How about where can I leave the suitcases? Where can I leave the suitcases? By the way, it looks like we're saying where can I to leave the suitcases, or where can I to park? But of course we don't say that to in English. So where can I leave the bags or the suitcases? What would that be? ¿Dónde puedo dejar las maletas? ¿Dónde puedo dejar las maletas? And we'll just take a quick pause here while I mention my very popular Levels 1 to 6 course. This takes the complete beginner or near beginner right up to a conversational level of Spanish in a series of very easy to follow steps. Now, all the lessons on this YouTube channel are supplementary, whereas the core Levels 1 to 6 is very much a step-by-step program delivered by me, the same teacher as all the other videos on this channel. And while the style is very similar to what you'll be used to from these videos on the channel, the key difference is that every lesson carefully builds on the previous lessons so that you can really feel that progress of going from little or no Spanish up to a level where you can confidently hold a conversation in Spanish. And that course download is available exclusively from prospanish.co.uk. And we can bring in the third column as well, using here or first. How would you ask, can I park here? And of course that would be a very everyday kind of question when you arrive somewhere new. Can I park here? What would that be? ¿Puedo aparcar aquí? ¿Puedo aparcar aquí? How about, can I try it first? How would you say, can I try it first? ¿Puedo probarlo primero? ¿Puedo probarlo primero? And looking at the middle column, let's add in a few more. So we've got cargar mi teléfono, quite straightforward. To charge my phone, cargar mi teléfono. Ver la carta, to see the menu. We might say to look at the menu or to see the menu. Ver is to see. Ver la carta, to see the menu. And then we have pagar con tarjeta. Pagar con tarjeta. So to pay by card. More literally, it's to pay with card. So con is with. Pagar con tarjeta, to pay with card, but we would say to pay by card. And it would be very common to use can I with these words. So can I see the menu? Well, what would that be? Can I see the menu? ¿Puedo ver la carta? ¿Puedo ver la carta? And maybe they're trying to take your order before you've even seen the menu. So you might want to use the word first from column 3. So you might want to ask, can I see the menu first? What would that be? ¿Puedo ver la carta primero? ¿Puedo ver la carta primero? And you might want to ask, can I pay by card? What would that be? ¿Puedo pagar con tarjeta? ¿Puedo pagar con tarjeta? And you could, or that might be a bit of extra information you don't need to add, but you could say, can I pay by card here? ¿Puedo pagar con tarjeta aquí? And with where can I, you might want to ask, where can I charge my phone? What would that be? Where can I charge my phone? ¿Dónde puedo cargar mi teléfono? ¿Dónde puedo cargar mi teléfono? You might add, por favor. So looking at column 1, we've got can I or I can, and we've got where can I. Let's have a look at the rest of this column. So we've got do you want? ¿Quieres? ¿Quieres? Well, quieres is you want, but we would most likely use it as a question. Do you want? ¿Quieres? We've got I need. And you can see already it's a bit like necessary, or you can see part of necessary in there. Necesito. Necesito is how it's pronounced in European Spanish, and that TH sound doesn't exist in Latin America, so it's pronounced as an S. Necesito. So necesito, I need, or necesito, I need. And voy a is I'm going to. Just notice the V in voy a is more like an English B than a V. So voy a, I'm going to. So looking back at do you want? ¿Quieres? And just remember that QU is always pronounced like a K, never a Qu. So ¿quieres? Do you want? You might get asked, do you want to see the menu? What would that be? Do you want to see the menu? ¿Quieres ver la carta? ¿Quieres ver la carta? Do you want to see the menu? By the way, there is the word menú. So ver el menú. But the menú normally refers to like the set menu, like the set lunch menu, whereas la carta is the full list of what they have to offer. And let's use do you want with the rest of the table. So how would you ask, do you want to park here? ¿Quieres aparcar aquí? ¿Quieres aparcar aquí? Or it might be, do you want to try it? What would that be? Do you want to try it? ¿Quieres probarlo? ¿Quieres probarlo? So maybe you've got a delicious looking dessert that you want the person you're with to try. ¿Quieres probarlo? Do you want to try it? And let's look at voy a. I'm going to. Voy a. So very useful because we can get straight into the future. Voy a. I'm going to. How would you say, I'm going to try it first? Voy a probarlo primero. Voy a probarlo primero. How about, I'm going to leave the cases here. Voy a dejar las maletas aquí. Voy a dejar las maletas aquí. And how would you say, I'm going to charge my phone first? What would that be? Voy a cargar mi teléfono primero. Voy a cargar mi teléfono primero. And looking at I need, necesito, or necesito in European Spanish with the TH sound, necesito. How would you say, I need to try it first? What would that be? Necesito probarlo primero. Necesito probarlo primero. How about, I need to leave the cases? What would that be? Necesito dejar las maletas. Or necesito dejar las maletas. What does it mean if I say no necesito ver la carta? No necesito ver la carta. Yeah, I don't need to see the menu. So we can just put no before any of these to make a negative. So how would you say I can't? So you know puedo is I can. How would you say I can't? No puedo. No puedo. So how would you say I can't pay by card? No puedo pagar con tarjeta. No puedo pagar con tarjeta. How about I'm not going to try it? What would that be? No voy a probarlo. No voy a probarlo. Let's just add the last two from the final column. We've got luego, which is later. You might have heard the phrase hasta luego, which means until later, like see you later. Hasta luego. So luego, later. And como antes, like before. Como antes, like before. So the antes is before. So just using column 2 and column 3, how would you say to try it like before? Probarlo como antes. Probarlo como antes. How about to park later? What would that be? Aparcar luego. Aparcar luego. So let's put it all together. How would you say, I'm going to park later? Voy a aparcar luego. Voy a aparcar luego. How would you ask, can I charge my phone later? ¿Puedo cargar mi teléfono luego? ¿Puedo cargar mi teléfono luego? How about, I need to leave my suitcases like before? What would that be? Necesito dejar las maletas como antes. Necesito dejar las maletas como antes. Or maybe with do you want? How would you ask, do you want to leave your suitcases like before? ¿Quieres dejar las maletas como antes? ¿Quieres dejar las maletas como antes? So you should have an idea now of just how quickly and easily it's possible to learn Spanish. So before we move on to the part of the lesson for non-beginners, another reminder that the ProSpanish Levels 1 to 6 course is only available for download from prospanish.co.uk. Okay, we're going to have two parts to the non-beginners section. So first of all, we're going to leave the two columns, so the second and third column, as they are. And in our first column, we're going to have what we might call impersonal phrases, but which are incredibly common in Spanish. So when you translate these directly, they might sound a bit weird, but I'm giving a literal translation so that you can differentiate between a personal I or you expression. So first of all, we have se puede. So se puede is incredibly common, and it would mean, literally means one can, so one in general. And depending on the context, in English, in a more normal translation, not a literal one, it would mean can I or can you. So, ¿se puede aparcar aquí? Is can one park here? Is it okay to park here? But in a more natural translation, it might be, can we park here? Can you park here? Can I park here? And then we have hay que. So hay que is more literally one has to or one should. And the more natural translation would be you have to, but it's you have to not in the sense of you personally, but you in general, one in general. Hay que. So hay que pagar con tarjeta. You have to pay by card, but it doesn't mean just you, it means in general. Then we have vale la pena. So vale la pena, it can be a phrase on its own, meaning it's worth it. But if we follow it with a verb, then the phrase is it's worth doing whatever it might be. Vale la pena esperar. It's worth waiting. And then we have tiene sentido. It makes sense. Tiene, it has, sentido, sense. So literally, it has sense, but we would say it makes sense. Tiene sentido. Okay, what would it mean if I say, vale la pena probarlo primero? What would that mean? It's worth trying it first. How about, hay que dejar las maletas aquí? You have to leave the cases here. So not just you, but everybody that comes here has to do that. How would you say it's worth leaving the suitcases first? What would that be? Vale la pena dejar las maletas primero. Vale la pena dejar las maletas primero. And how about, it makes sense to park first? What would that be? Tiene sentido aparcar primero. Tiene sentido aparcar primero. Let's try negative. It doesn't make sense. How would you say it doesn't make sense to park here? No tiene sentido aparcar aquí. No tiene sentido aparcar aquí. How about you have to park here, i.e. one has to park here? What would that be? Hay que aparcar aquí. Hay que aparcar aquí. And something you might hear very often. How would you say you can't park here? As in, it's not allowed, one can't park here. What would that be? No se puede aparcar aquí. No se puede aparcar aquí. And how about you can't pay by card like before? So they've changed it. What would that be? You can't pay by card like before. No se puede pagar con tarjeta como antes. No se puede pagar con tarjeta como antes. Okay, let's change things around a bit. And we're going to use the imperative, the command. So do this, do that. So park here, or leave the bags first, or charge your phone later. So an imperative. And the form of the verb is the same as he or she. So aparca, park, like you park, is the same as he or she parks. So looking at the verbs, it's aparca, deja, and then look at pruébalo. So prueba is he or she tries. Pruébalo, try it. So the lo sticks onto the end of the verb. Pruébalo, try it. Charge, carga, so carga tu teléfono, charge your phone. And paga, paga con tarjeta, pay by card. Okay, let's practice these. How would you say park here? Aparca aquí. How about charge your phone later? Carga tu teléfono luego. Carga tu teléfono luego. And you probably also know that for later we can use más tarde. So carga tu teléfono más tarde. Charge your phone later, more late. How about leave the bags here? Deja las maletas aquí. And let's extend that with like before. Leave the bags here like before. What would that be? Deja las maletas aquí como antes. Deja las maletas aquí como antes. What about try it here? What would that be? Pruébalo aquí. Pruébalo aquí. Try it here. How about let's shorten down pay by card to just pay. How would you say pay here? Paga aquí. Paga aquí. How about pay later? Paga luego. Paga luego. Or paga más tarde. Pay later. How would you say charge it here? What would that be? Charge it here. So instead of charge your phone, just charge it here. What would that be? Cárgalo aquí. Cárgalo aquí. Charge it here. How about leave it here? What would that be? Déjalo aquí. Déjalo aquí. And if we use el coche, the car, of course, depending on what region you're in, it might be el carro or el auto or la máquina. We'll just use el coche as a general one. How would you say park the car first? Aparca el coche primero. Aparca el coche primero. And how would you say charge the car here? Carga el coche aquí. Carga el coche aquí. And that brings us to the end of this video. As mentioned earlier, my ProSpanish Levels 1 to 6 course can only be downloaded from prospanish.co.uk.